If people start to think that white people are superior to others because, well, God's white, then it does matter. But otherwise, it really doesn't matter what image we have of God, of Jesus, of the divine. But generally, his name, his image, and even the stories we know about Jesus are merely vehicles that are meant to help us to discover truth. A truth that is bigger than any image or any name or any story that you or I can imagine. So the Bible and other scriptures, they point us to ultimate good or God, but we should not trap God in any book or race or gender or religion, which is to say that God is not a Christian or a Muslim or a Mormon or a Methodist. God is not a Buddhist or a Baha'i or a Brethren. Neither is God a Hindu or a Yu-Yu. God's name is not Jehovah or Jesus, Allah or Adonai, Buddha or Brahma. All of these are human names for a mystery that transcends all naming. Another way to say this is that these are all God's name. But anyone who believes that he or she has found the one and only name, the one and only symbol, the one and only scripture, is doing what the Buddhists call mistaking the finger for the moon. Names like Jesus, Jehovah, Allah, Krishna, and God, they help us to refer to the transcendent mystery at the core of life and death and love. But we should not get stuck on, and certainly shouldn't argue over, whether the word we use is the right word for the ultimate reality. Just think of how in English, we have the word water, which stands for water, or H2O, right? And in Spanish, they call it agua. And in Japanese, they call it mizu. And you probably know another dozen languages and ways in which people refer to water, all referring to the very same reality. Now, the main stream of thought that we're wading through this morning is transcendentalism, right? That part of our three-part lineage. And that's because this month, in May, we're studying the theme of transcendentalism, and the kids are studying transcendentalism in the Sunday school. But I want to make it clear that if All Souls were a plant, Christianity is the soil in which this church is rooted and planted and grows. If it were not for Christianity and the Bible, this church would not be here today. That's why in this church that we teach that all the religions have something we can learn from, and all cultures, of course. But the Bible is still our foundational scripture, and we have a special relationship with the Bible and with Christian history and Christian liturgy and Christian music. To forget this or to deny this is to mistake the very foundation and lineage of this church. And it's said, if you don't know where you came from, then you have no idea where you're going. That said, the Enlightenment thinking and thinkers have shaped the way we read and interpret the Bible and the way that we understand truth and knowledge. For at least the first 300 years of our history, born out of the Protestant Reformation in Europe, our religious forebears were highly rational Christians who believed that the Bible was the one and only revelation of God. They taught that the way to discover God and truth was to read the Bible and interpret it with reason. However, in the 19th century, Unitarian ministers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Theodore Parker said that there's something that transcends biblical rationalism. They said that truth can be discovered outside of the Bible, and said that it can be discovered through experience and through intuition rather than through reason. Now you have to understand that this was radical and heretical even for the Unitarians of that time. The Unitarian establishment said to them, absolutely not. We are Christians, And the Bible is the sole revelation of God, and reason is the only faithful tool that we can use to understand the truth. Now, a conflict raged throughout our denomination and across this land between the transcendentalists and the Christian rationalists that made up the churches within this tradition. And eventually, cool heads prevailed, and they decided that there was enough room for both the Christians and the transcendentalists here in our churches. Now, today there are still many Unitarian and Universalist churches that are specifically Christian. Most of them in this country are in New England. That means that they followed a Christian liturgical calendar each week. They sing Christian hymns. They use the Bible as their scripture for their readings and their education. Now, in these churches, they teach all religions are valid, but they believe that they are meant to walk the path of Christianity and to follow the teachings of Jesus specifically. And all of the churches in Hungary and Romania, including our partner church in Enlaca, are specifically Christian. And as are the churches in India and Pakistan and the Philippines. And I believe, also in a number of them in England and Scotland and Wales. And I believe that the church in Uganda would also consider itself a Unitarian Universalist Christian church, but we'll find out later this summer when Reverend Mark comes here from Kampala. But we should remember that All Souls in Tulsa, this church, began as more of a Unitarian Universalist Christian church. For example, this church recited in unison every Sunday as part of its liturgy the Lord's Prayer every week until the 1960s. This church was also one of the last churches in our whole association nationwide of over 1,000 churches to change to the current hymnal, which is our most eclectic hymnal. It was only 9 years ago that with an interim minister, senior minister, Peter Rabel, some of you remember him, that the church switched from our blue hymnal, which is dominated by Christian hymns of praise and worship, to the current one that we have, just months before I arrived. Now that said, this church, however, has always worked hard to drink from all the streams of our heritage, of Christianity, the Enlightenment, and transcendentalism. Needless to say, there are individuals in our church who fill their cup a bit more from one or the other stream. So there are some who are more Christian in their orientation than others. There are others who are more influenced by the Enlightenment thinkers and ideas of humanism and science, and who prefer logical proof to be at the core of their understanding in religion. And there are others whose spirituality tends towards transcendentalism, in that they take a more mystical and spiritual approach to religion. And many are influenced by Eastern religious traditions and practices. As a church, we strive to make ample room for all. I think we do a pretty good job in our Sunday and Wednesday programming. We have Bible classes for those who want to explore the Bible and that part of our heritage. We have various programs and speakers from the Enlightenment thinkers. Such programs recently that we've had is one on nanotechnology last week, church-state separation, programs on Abraham Lincoln and evolution, and various political and intellectual streams of thought. And for the transcendentalists, we have yoga classes and Tai Chi and meditation on Wednesday nights. We have world religion classes on Sunday mornings, and other opportunities for people to cultivate a firsthand experience of the Spirit, of God and truth for the transcendentalists. But probably the most unexpected transcendentalist opportunity to be offered at All Souls has come through our new contemporary service right here at 11:30.